And we should be live. So I'll give it a few seconds to check when I can see the numbers. Hi Caroline, hi Catherine, nice to see you here. So we've got about 10 minutes before to start. We're just waiting for everyone to connect. So if anyone was completely new to me, if you were watching this on replay in the next few days or weeks or years even, if you wanted to skip the hellos, you could skip the next 10 minutes to go straight into it. And Emma is here. Welcome, Emma. So we are live from London, from Brompton Cemetery. It is nearly 6 p.m. UK time on 14th of July. It's the French National Day. So that's... So if you're watching this and it's no longer 14th of July, you're watching a replay. And Suzanne is here, and Ronilyn is here, and Lethargy, nice to see you all. So we've got a few minutes before to start. Hopefully you can hear me properly. The signal is usually very good in here, so we're good. And nice to see Michelle and Trish and Jenny. And Sandrine is here. Welcome, Sandrine. Let me show you a glimpse of the view. It's a beautiful day. Some of you might remember last year when I did a live over here. It was raining horribly. It was very, very, very bad. So we're lucky today. Let me check how long we've got. 8 minutes. 8 minutes. We're just waiting for everyone to connect. And welcome, Philippa. And Julie is here. Welcome, Julie. Don't know how much you can hear of the background, but we can hear a few birds as well as a few planes. We're quite, we're pretty much on the Heathrow plane path, really. So we've got a few planes going over us. Hello, Nathan Graveyard. You're saying hello to the graveyard or to the graveyard people? Although technically we shouldn't call it a graveyard, it is a cemetery. Hello, you've got a little doggy friend there. I've had quite a few since I've been here this afternoon. There was a little doggy that jumped on me as well, so I'm very muddy now. I don't really mind being muddy, but I don't really like the mud from the cemeteries. I'm always worried that there might be some juices of dead bodies. But too late. Doggy had very muddy paws, so I'm all dirty now. Oh, I've missed something. Did Jessie say she's new? Well, if anyone was completely new to me, you're very welcome. Let us know in the chat if you happen to be new. Oh, it's Jessie a dog? Okay. Very welcome anyway. So we've got about 6 minutes to go. We might see quite a few doggies today. A lot of people use Brompton as a dog walk. It's actually a very lively cemetery. We are in, well, technically we are in Kensington and Chelsea, so it's an area where you don't have that many open green spaces. Well, you have some, but they're private, you know, so in terms of parks, it's the biggest around here. Hi, Laurie. Hi, Dawn. Nice to see you here. Julie is asking, what's the difference between graveyard and cemetery? Interesting question. A graveyard is a place of burials, usually around the church, and so the graves are around the church, a church as a place of worship. A cemetery, it's a purposely built burial ground. You still have a chapel in the middle, or a few, depending if you have any dissenters or any religion. But the chapel is not really used as a place of normal worship every Sunday. So they are purpose-built places. In many languages, we don't do the difference. In my language, for example, in French, a graveyard is a cimetière, and that's it. We don't have any other term for it. Usually, cemeteries would be a little bit newer than the graveyards. Often the graveyards were saturated, especially in the big cities. So they had to buy some land on the outskirts to create those huge cemeteries. It feels like forever. Well, good to have you back. So we've got 4 minutes to go. Cemeteries are consecrated as well. Yeah. Well, depending on the religion, some have maybe a little quarter that is not consecrated, but most of them would be consecrated by the Church of England. Yeah. This one is like most of them. They often have a little space. Well, Abney Park is not. Abney Park was created for dissenters, or non-conformists at least. But the rest of the Magnificent Sevens, yes, they'll be consecrated by the Church of England. Yes, that's a graveyard tour, getting you all together. Well, we're still not here, not all of us. We're still missing a few, but that's cool. And welcome, Herbie, nice to see you here. Let me check what time it is. We've got 2 minutes to go. Another doggy friend that wants to say hello. Oh, no, he's been called. We might also spot a few birds and squirrels here. Hi, Sarah. You hope some ghosts are joining us too? Well, maybe. Another aircraft going down to Heathrow Airport. We are on the fly path, really, so we might see a few. Not sure we'll see any ghosts though. Although, remember last time I came here, there was a particular tree that dropped a pistachio. Well, it was not a pistachio tree. So I don't know if it was a squirrel that just picked it up from a bin and dropped it on me, or if it was a ghost, but we never know. Oh no, not Louisa Atish. I'm not actually sure she'd like me. I'll tell you a bit more about Louisa Cassati in a moment. I mean, she was a very interesting character, but also fairly selfish, I think. Anyway, let's see. 1 more minute to go. You vote for the ghost. Okay, let's look for them. It's a bit bright. I don't know whether we'll see them much. Yes, a ghost, a squirrel. Yeah, but if it was a ghost, what did they want to say with the pistachio? What was the message? I didn't get it. She looks rather special in life. God knows what she looks like in death. Yeah. I need to move around because when the background is white, I can't read anymore. Oh, you had lunch with a French teacher. You also vote for a ghost. Not human nuts. Right, it is officially time to start. So, welcome guys. Welcome to Brompton Cemetery. If anyone was completely new to me, I'm Natalie. So I'll take you for a little live walk in this beautiful green space. And without any further ado, let's flip this camera around and let's go. So I wanted to start with a grave here that's a bit hidden. It's not, maybe not the most impressive of all graves, but let me show you. You'd probably recognize his name because he's been mentioned in, well, at least 2 of my tours before. Let me try to frame him. There he is, Sir Henry Cole. Do you guys remember why we spoke about Henry Cole? Let's see if you remember. We talked about him in my Christmas tour, and we talked about him when I did a little video in Sheer the other day in Surrey. We saw his house. Do you remember what he's famous for? Let me know in the chat if you do. Kurt is here, so of course Kurt does. Yes, exactly. It's the gentleman that invented the Christmas cards. I think I've got an example. Let me show you his first Christmas card. So he commissioned an artist to paint a little image of his family celebrating Christmas with pictures of charity on both sides. And the penny post had just been invented, so suddenly you could send those cards with a penny stamp. So that's he was also very much involved in the creation of the Victoria and Albert Museum. Anyway, there's another. So on this side of the cemetery, we'll run into quite a few people that we've mentioned before in my tours. And once we get to the south side, it's gonna be a few people we've not mentioned before. But this gentleman you should also recognize. Let me show you his stage name, Mr. William Terrace. So some of you might remember him. We talked about him. Well, we didn't talk much about his life, but we talked about his afterlife. Sadly, he's more remembered now because of the way he died and the paranormal activity that followed than for his acting work. But he was a Victorian actor. He played, in Robin Hood and Shakespeare's plays and stuff like that. He was in his 50s when he died. He was a bit like, imagine like the Hugh Grant of the day, in late Victorian times. And one night, another little friend there, hello. One night he was on his way to the Adelphi Theatre where he was performing that night in Covent Garden. He was coming through the back door with his colleague when he was stabbed. He was stabbed by another actor called Arthur Prince. That was just before the performance. I mean, people were waiting for him to come on stage, and he famously said, just before he passed, he said, "I'll be back." And oh, he has definitely been back. There have been quite a few sightings in around Covent Garden and in Covent Garden Underground Station as well. Even the very minute he died, I think it was 7:20 p.m., his wife and son, they lived miles away in a big mansion. Apparently the very minute he passed away, obviously his wife had no idea, his dog started barking like crazy at home. And the wife was so confused. She was like, what what does he see that I don't see, you know? Because some people believe that dogs have some kind of perceptions that we don't. And that was apparently at the very time of his passing. So did he appear to his own dog? We don't know. And Covent Garden Station actually was so much disturbed by the ghost. We don't know for sure why he would be haunting the station. He died not far away. I mean, it was like just down the street, but he did not die in the station. The station was not built yet. He died I think it was in the 1890s. But so many, oh, another friend, hello. So many people actually had some paranormal experiences in the station. So many staff members that they had to call a medium. So there's a psychic that came to try to put the ghost to rest. And the psychic didn't really get much apart from 4 letters, T-E-R-R. And of course, some of the local community, they were like, oh, that might be William Terrace, the Victorian actor. And then some portraits of Terrace were shown to the staff that had seen the ghost. And apparently they all recognized him. No questions about it. So he probably was hunting Covent Garden Station for a while. Then I zip it so you can hear the birds. Can you hear them, the birds? Sometimes we don't know how well you can hear with the microphone, but anyway, there's another gentleman that we mentioned in some of my tours before that is resting right here. His name is Jon Snow. Jon Snow, not the Jon Snow from Game of Thrones, but Jon Snow, the epidemiologist. So we talked about him when we talked about plague and cholera in Soho. Oh, you can hear them perfect. So there is his resting place. So Snow was one of the first epidemiologists, really. A good epidemiologist doesn't only study the cases, but he studies the oddities, you know. He had already been confronted to cholera. He was from York originally, but he had worked as an apprentice under a doctor well, ironically, in a little town called Killingworth, next to Newcastle, where cholera had struck with the miners. And he was actually convinced that cholera was waterborne, that it was not transmitted in the air like people believed at the time. You know, people believed in the miasma theory. They believed that you would breathe in diseases with the smells. They were so convinced, you know, that they didn't listen to him at all. And eventually, when there was a large epidemic in Soho, we know now that cholera epidemic was probably spreading due to a baby Louis, that had some of his poo in the water supply, really. But let me show you the main gate. So that's the main gate into the cemetery. And Snow was absolutely convinced that it was the water. He had studied a lot of the cases and the exceptions, the people that were not contaminated in Soho, because there were over 600 people that caught cholera. Cholera was a horrible disease. You could be fine at breakfast and dead at night. It could be very, very quick. When you started to have rice, it's called rice water stools. I don't think I need to explain that one. You knew you were gonna die very, very soon after. And he very bravely knocked at people's door to find out where they took their water from. And some ladies at the workhouse, they were not contaminated. So he went and knocked, and they said, oh, we don't drink the water from the pump. We have our own pump in the workhouse. Then he went to the brewery, the Lions Brewery in Soho. And he was like, where do you get your water from? And they said, we don't drink water. We have free beer. Why would we drink the water anyway? he was like, uh-huh. Then he found the case of a lady that had died in Hampstead. That was a bit odd, because Hampstead is known for having good waters, you know, it's up there. And it turned out that that lady, she used to live in Soho, and she was very fond of the taste of that water from that very pump in Soho. Then Snow decided to remove the handle of the water pump. Would you believe the epidemic stopped? So he literally proved that cholera was waterborne, but people didn't believe him quite yet. It took another couple of decades before people really believed and really gave up on the miasma theory. But yeah, amazing epidemiologist. And while we're here, let me show you this amazing lady that you also have heard of in some of my tours. Well, at least one of them, when we did a tour about the suffragettes. So this is Emmeline Pankhurst. So she was the leader of the Women's Social and Political Union, and she was a suffragette, not a suffragist. Two very different terms. So the suffragettes, they were using violence. They were using deeds, not words. She used to be a suffragist before that. Actually, she was from a family of activists, really. The suffragists, they had been campaigning for women's vote for decades, really. Not very successfully. Peacefully, but not very successfully. Mainly women, but some men as well, like Emmeline's husband. And eventually, some of them decided to use violence, deeds, not words, you know. And it's the Daily Mail that actually labeled them as suffragettes. It was meant to be insulting at the time, but Emmeline embraced it. She decided to embrace it, and she actually pronounced it suffragette because they were going to get the vote. So amazing lady. And you probably know quite a lot about Emmeline already because we mentioned her in my suffragettes tour. But you might not know as much about the sculpture. So the sculpture of the monument, it's a lady. Her name is Julian, or was Julian Phelps Allen. Now, she was actually born as Eva Dorothy Allen. But she had changed her name to Julian because of artistic opportunities, really. So she thought as a sculptor she might have a few more opportunities if people believed she was a man. You know, it was not a very girly job at the time to be a sculptor. You might know Queen Victoria. She famously had one of her daughters being a sculptor, and she was not exactly massively excited about it. And I mean, still today, you know, for example, J.K. Rowling, when she published Harry Potter, she decided to go with J.K. So people wouldn't know that she was a female. Now, Julian kept her well, today we'll probably say she kept her pronouns. She was going under the first name Julian, but she was called Miss. So she didn't want to be called Mr. She was a lesbian, so she probably wasn't the girliest of ladies. But yeah, she lived her life as Miss Julian Phelps Allen. And she lived a very, very long life. She died at the age of 103. She fought for both World War. So, very, very interesting lady indeed. So that really shows that the cemeteries, it's not only about the people buried here, but many people got involved in other ways. And this avenue, by the way, that would have been prime spot, you know, in terms of location. So you see some big mausoleums. The cemetery was opened in 1840. Today we've got, I think it's 35,000 monuments, 205,000 people buried here. And it's actually fairly easy for me to run a tour because it's very well documented. Although it was run at first by the the London Cemetery Company. They ran out of money, and it was nationalized in 10 years later, really. So that's why it's very, very well documented, because it was a public cemetery much earlier on than some of the Magnificent Seven. And as you can see, we've got some interesting wildlife and flowers. So for those of you that don't know, the Magnificent Seven, they were those cemeteries on what was at the time the outskirts of London. They had been created because of the lack of space in the little graveyards around their local churches. Emma, yes, today it's very much part of central London. I mean, we are in Kensington and Chelsea. To give you an idea, I walked from Buckingham Palace. It took me an hour to walk. So we are on the west side, but today it seems fairly central. At the time, though, it would have been a little bit outside of, well, not outside, but really almost on the outskirts of London. And so yeah, it's been public from 1850 really, and now it belongs to the royal estate. It's a royal park, as much as St James's Park or Hyde Park or Green Park. It belongs to the Crown. Now, the mausoleum straight ahead might be a time machine. Yes, you've heard this right. It is alleged to be a time machine, or if not, at least a teleportation machine. Now, I'll tell you a bit more about the machine in a moment, but for now, let me show you one of the gentlemen that designed it. His name is Joseph Bonamy, and he's buried here. His grave is actually very sad. Hold on, I'm going through the wild here. One sec. There we go. Yeah, it's very sad because if you looked at the names, he lost 4 of his kids in the space of 1 week because of a bad cold. You know, today we forget that this even happens. Well, apart from COVID, but kids luckily were not affected too much. But yeah, you know, like today to lose 4 of your kids in one go, you'd need a very traumatic accident, really, a tragedy. But at the time, you know, you could lose 4 of them in a week. So yeah, poor Joseph. He was an Egyptologist. You know, at the time you had what we called Egyptomania. People went crazy for Egypt. So you might be able to see he's got Anubis on his grave. So Anubis was the god of the dead and embalming, really. So the keeper of the dead. Yeah, bad cold, probably a mini epidemic, but we don't really know which one. Could be scarlet letter or any of. Sorry, I'm just being spiked by some weed. So yeah, very, very sad. And he was he was collaborating with another gentleman that today, to be honest, we would definitely call a charlatan. His name was Samuel Alfred Warner. Samuel Warner was he was a naval weapon creator, but he was, for example, he designed some kind of a weapon to be able to target a ship at the distance. So he basically, and he actually did it in front of the Prime Minister, Robert Peel. He claimed that he could literally sink a ship from the distance. But the Prime Minister witnessed it, so what did he really do? We don't know. So, yeah, Warner was a weird gentleman, and he actually died in some very mysterious circumstances. And it is believed that Bonamy and Warner might have discovered the secret of time travel and invisible torpedo. Thank you, Kurt. And might have hidden it in this mausoleum. So it is the mausoleum of a lady called Anna Courtesane. She was a socialite. She was never married, but she had 3 daughters. We believe them to be buried with her, but we don't actually know. It's not recorded what's inside. And let me show you. We don't have the key, so no one's got the key for that. So no one actually knows what's inside. And the decoration they look interesting, almost like hieroglyphics. The mausoleum, by the way, was. It took a few years to finish it, so Anna was not buried in there straight after her passing in 1849, but a few years later. So yeah, very mysterious. And some claim that Warner was eliminated because he knew how to do time travel or teleportation. And Anna Courtesane, she was also, she worked as some kind of a housekeeper for a very wealthy gentleman. We believe him to be the father of his daughters, but we don't know for sure. And she ended up with all his fortune. So she was a socialite, but not married. And did they get it right? Is there a time travel machine inside? I don't know. I don't know if we will ever open it. That'll be interesting to go and take a look. But hey ho. Now there's another lady that is buried here. She's on the other side. We're not gonna go all the way because she's in a communal grave. A communal grave, not to be confused with a pauper's grave. A communal grave was cheap, but you'd pay. You'd be buried with strangers with no headstone, but you'd pay anyway. As opposed to a pauper's grave, that was for people that had no money whatsoever, and that was actually paid by the parish. And so yeah, that lady, her name is Harriet Wilson. She was born Dubochet, not French, Swiss. Harriet Wilson, she's known for the memoirs of Harriet Wilson. She was a courtesan, a Regency courtesan. By the way, not to be confused with Sarah Wilson. Sarah Wilson is from the same time period. She was a very early scammer. Sarah Wilson, she basically was transported to America, before to transport them to Australia, they went to America. And she managed to make people believe that she was the sister of Queen Charlotte. So she made a lot of money, she stayed at people's for free, she lived the life of an aristocrat, when really she was a nobody. So anyway, that's Sarah Wilson, not to be confused with Harriet. Let me show you this one before we go. Beautiful lion. That gentleman was he was a bodyguard for George IV. Anyway, let's go down towards the main road. So Harriet, she was a courtesan. She had some customers from high society, like the Duke of Argyll, potentially the Duke of Wellington, the Prince Regent. A courtesan, some people might call them a prostitute, but it's a different type of prostitution. A courtesan would usually, sometimes they would have only one customer at the time. It was more than sex, they'll spend time with them, would go to the theater with them. Usually they were more educated anyway, so they could hold a conversation, and they expected to be very well taken care of. That's the tree that gave me a pistachio nuts last year, and it's definitely not a pistachio tree. Look, and Harriet, very interesting lady, and when she was never massively beautiful, apparently. That's some lovely flowers, but she was very sassy, and she was very much liked by the gentlemen. And when she started to age a little and she was not as successful as a courtesan, she decided to publish her memoir. She published it in like a series of chapters every so often. So she would give you a little cliffhanging, about the names of her customers that would be revealed in the next chapter. And she was actually blackmailing them. So she was blackmailing them into paying her to avoid being published. We believe, again, we don't know for sure, but we believe that the Prince Regent actually paid. The Duke of Wellington famously said, "Publish and be hanged." He was not published, I think, at the end. So did he pay? I don't know, but yeah. And so that's the memoirs of Harriet Wilson. The memoirs of sex workers at the time were already a popular genre. People had started to be very interested into the lives of those ladies. So no worries, Ronnie. So we don't see much from here, but let me show you a view from the sky. The cemetery was basically built in the shape of a cathedral. So it's meant to look like an outdoor cathedral, really. So we'll be in the main, in the center at the moment. Okay, let me remove that. Oh, there are a couple of interesting people here. Let me show you. The gentleman here, he was Victoria Cross holder, I think. He's the first one that destroyed a German aircraft through the First World War. Sadly, he died very soon after in fighting as well. But yeah, beautiful monument as well. And this grave here, so this is actually interesting. Nutkin. You might know a squirrel called Nutkin. I don't, because I wasn't here as a child, so I don't really know children's books. But you might remember the tale of Squirrel Nutkin. It is claimed, so you might see the name here, Nutkin. It is claimed that Beatrix Potter, she lived around here, and she probably spent quite a lot of time in the cemetery looking at the wildlife. So she might have been inspired into choosing the name Nutkin from that very grave. We do have a lot of squirrels in the cemetery. Today they're all grey, but at the beginning of the 20th century, maybe we had some red ones. Who knows? Anyway, we are now in the middle, right in the middle of the cemetery, and around us you've got the catacombs. The catacombs, they were not actually very popular ever. I think there's only 500 people buried in there, so commercially it was not a great success. Let me show you the door. I know some of you love your doors. This one is a bit creepy with the snakes. It looks a bit Harry Potterish, really, like Slytherin, or I think sometimes they do open them for open days and stuff, but at the time they were not really safe because, decomposing bodies, they create some kind of gases, and it was never. A lot of people did not want to be buried in there. You love the snakes. Yeah, I like the door as well. Not that I would have it in my back garden, but yeah. So today a lot of people use the park for cycling and exercise. When I was here earlier, I've been here a few hours because I wanted to double check everything. You had some people doing their yoga, or people training their kids on bicycles and stuff. So it's lovely to see a place for the dead being used by the living. It is still technically it has very few spots available, but some people can potentially be buried in here. I think Kurt earlier mentioned the Chelsea Football Club, Stamford. That's the stadium there. Not very pretty, but yeah, that's Stamford Bridge Stadium. Anyway, let me go down to show you another gentleman buried here. He's no longer here actually. We had a Native American from South Dakota that was doing a show here in the 1890s, a Buffalo Bill show. Hi Katie, nice to see you here. And sadly, he died here in London. And at the time, you know, well, they didn't really have the possibility to bring the bodies back overseas. He's not the only one. There's a little baby that died as well through the show, a baby known as White Star, and the baby fell off a horse, sadly. So they've been buried together in here, and his name is Chief Long Wolf. Let me turn around. He's got some beautiful lavender as well. Oh, I can smell the lavender. One day we might have the smells on YouTube, and you'll be able to smell the lavender as well one day. I think they're doing some research in Japan. Anyway, there he was. He was buried here for about 100 years, but his descendants, they actually brought his body back to South Dakota with the little White Star. So now he's no longer in the grave, but you still have a wolf for her, Chief Long Wolf. Right, let's go and see a lady that a few of you have been mentioning in the chat, Marchesa Luisa Casati. She was, well, let's say an interesting character. She was a very, very rich lady. She had married a marquis, very tall and very thin. She's said to have inspired a lot of fashion designers. And she wanted to be a work of art, herself, her body. She would go out with very black eyes. She would put some coal literally on her eyes, sometimes even a bit of velvet on her eyes. She was described as bisexual. I don't know whether she actually was, but she nearly broke up a lesbian couple in Greek island because she posed naked for one of them. She was married, but her husband, well, they did live together and they didn't really care about one another after a point. She lived in Venice at some point. Well, she had a few properties. She had a lot of money. She was known to be seen on a gondola with her two cheetahs. She had two cheetahs pet. And there he is. Although she was extremely wealthy, she did die in poverty. And she was a fashionista. She was a fashion icon. She would look so amazing. She was spotted, though, towards the end of her life, looking into the bins. Someone has given her £1 here. Looking into rubbish to find, you know, a piece of feather or a piece of whatever it might be for an outfit. Let me show you. Sometimes she'd dress out, like, she'll dress up in blood for something, or for, this one was a dress looking like a fountain. So very, very original, really. Now, although she loved animals, she didn't really treat them the way we would today. For example, to give you an idea, she used to lightly sedate. So she would drug snakes to wear them as a necklace. So she would turn up at a party with a drugged snake around her neck. Apparently there was a party in Paris where she didn't want to invite Coco Chanel because Coco was too boring for her. So yeah, fascinating lady. And usually people give her, usually when I come I see a few bottles and people give her a few items. There's not much today for some reason. Yeah, she has been described as the Lady Gaga of her days, yeah. So yeah, very interesting character, although according to some, she was also very selfish. Anyway, let me go and find the first lady buried here. I need to be careful not to miss it because it's a very discreet one. That was in 1840. So that was the cemetery actually opened before the design was even finished. So they were still working on the architecture and stuff. She was well, we don't know much about her. She died in. I need to be careful because it's around here somewhere. She died in childbirth. Oh, here she is. It's basically just that grave here. She had married a gentleman that was 10 years older. So yeah, that's the one. We don't, there's not much to see, but that's Emma Shaw. We don't know whether she died in childbirth or a few days later. You know, at the time, that was still quite a dangerous thing. The child probably died as well because apparently on the next census, her husband, Charles, was childless, or at least he didn't live with a child, so the kid probably died as well, sadly. So she was the very first lady to be buried here in Brompton Cemetery. And you know what? When I started to do tours in cemeteries and graveyards, a lot of people would ask me, who was the first person buried there? And to be honest, I often knew the answer because I would have read it somewhere, but sometimes I thought, who cares, you know? And every time I did a tour, someone would ask me, and for a while I was like, why do we want to know? And I learned something recently, I had no idea. Apparently, since medieval times really, the first person buried in any type of burial grounds, they became their guardians. So sometimes they even believed it was too much of a responsibility for a human. So sometimes they would bury a dog before, or any animal before to bury a human, just so the dog could become the guardian. And I suppose this tradition kind of unconsciously maybe stayed in the population. So that's probably why we still care so much about who was the first person buried there. Who knows? Anyway, let's go towards the murder story. Well, at least two murders, a double murder. We have a couple of beautiful monuments here as well. The one with the boat on the top, apparently he was the fastest swimmer on the Thames, on the Tyne as well. Always treat Emma with kindness. Yes, all the Emmas should be well treated. Right, so there's a gentleman that was a reverend, and he was also the chaplain in the chapel here. So you know, of course, you need a priest when you do a burial. And one day, the priest and his housekeeper, they disappeared. People were not massively worried quite yet, but they had not been seen for a few days. And eventually something quite weird happened. Some guys were commissioned to move some furniture. We are in 1872, to give you an idea. So some removal guys went into, his name was Elias. So they went into Elias' flat and they moved a few furnitures. Apparently it was for the let me tell you, because otherwise I'm going to be laughing. The graveyard used to be also used as a pickup point for, people. In the 70s we had people called they were dubbed the pretty policemen. Sadly, they were policemen that would kind of approach gay boys and kind of incite them into hooking up, and then they would arrest them for soliciting, which is mad. But when I first looked for the reverend, I came down here and I was like, who's there? I thought there was someone very important here. And I realized, no, it's just a nice spot to hide. So if you want to do anything discreet in the cemetery, you have a lovely little spot here behind the tree. No one would see you. Yes, thank you, Kurt. Elias was his name, and his housekeeper was Anne Boss. So the both of them are buried here. So yeah, Anne and Elias. The removal company comes in there, and they removed a few furnitures for the so-called nephew, and the do you get the transcript? I got distracted here. So they found the body. Sadly, they found the box with Anne's body inside. So the both of them are buried here. You don't see much of the graves today, but it's Elias and Anne next to one another. So yeah, once they found Anne, they found Elias. He had been buried in the garden, and the culprit was found. Apparently, his motive was only robbery. He stole a few furnitures. He was hanged, but. So we are in 1870, so it's no longer a public hanging. It's at the Old Bailey, and just before he actually tried to cheat the hangman, running into a wall to try to kill himself. That didn't work. He only got a few scratches, and then the hangman was a bit annoyed. So they actually brought him towards his execution spot on a chair. He was literally tied up to a chair, because they didn't want him to try to take his own life again. And apparently because of the chair, he was actually hanged with quite a longer noose, and he struggled for several minutes. Apparently it was quite horrible. Yes, exactly, Kurt. Walter Miller was his name. So yeah, apparently quite a horrific execution, really. Now, one more very, very sad story here. The lady buried just there behind that little tree there. Well, actually, the tree has grown out of her. She was a lovely lady apparently, and she died before her husband. Her name was Henrietta, and when she died, her husband never fully. He never fully recovered, really. He apparently would come here, and he used to believe that she was calling him. So I think his name was Albert Dredge, his name. He would come here and pray, and people would see him praying on his knee. And one day there was a witness that saw him pray, or at least he looked like he was praying, when he removed his hat and shot himself right here. It's very sad, but apparently he was convinced that Henrietta was calling him. He was convinced that he could hear her calling him. So when they found his body, in his pocket, he had a little note for a lady, Rebecca. He was days later. So he had a little apology message for her in his pocket, and he had also given a letter to a friend. So yeah, quite horrific. Probably even worse for whoever witnessed it, because there was a gentleman just walking along the cemetery, but he had no idea. So yeah, quite sad. But maybe she was calling him. Maybe he was meant to go. Who knows, Yes, Miss Rebecca Payne, that's the young girl he was meant to marry a few days later. Now let's go back towards the middle, because there's a last little lady I want to show you. By the way, when we talked about Harriet Wilson earlier, she's buried somewhere down that way, down my left. But that's the area with the communal graves, so there's not much to see. Those communal graves, you could have like up to 14 caskets on top of one another. Usually what they did is they'll dig a grave, they'll put someone in there, and they wouldn't quite close it yet until it was full. So, you know, you could end up with like 10 strangers on top of you, really. And no monument if you didn't have money. It'd be an awkward holy tree that drops pistachios. To be honest, I think it's more likely to have been a squirrel. You know, squirrels do need to have fun as well sometimes. I'm not sure what would be the message from a ghost. I do think you can send some messages from above, wherever we are, because I believe I had a message once. Well, not a message, but I did lose a friend a few years ago, and one day I was like, okay, give me a sign. Nothing happened for a week. A week later, the tap opened upon the lawn in my room, the water run, and I said to him, oh, Mirko, you're going to have to do better than that if you want me to, you know. And a few minutes later, so I jumped on the bicycle to go towards Peckham, and well, basically there was an occasion with the very same friend on Christmas Day when we got arrested. Well, not arrested, but the police stopped us because I was on a shopping trolley in the middle of the street. Mirko was pushing me. And at that point, so I had just thought about that event like 2 minutes earlier. And then suddenly, I swear I'm not exaggerating, I didn't have to pedal my bicycle. Something or someone was pushing me. And because I had just said, you're going to have to do better than that, well, that was perfect. I mean, that could be no one else. And I've tried that route. I've tried the route again. I've tried the very same path. And I do have to pedal. I mean, it's not going down or anything. You have to pedal. So I do think people from wherever we go or wherever we came from, I do think they can send you some messages, but I don't know why anyone would be dropping me a pistachio. Anyway, here is the last little lady I wanted to show you. So this is Princess Victoria Gurama. She was the Princess of Coorg, so that's one of the little kingdoms, you know, you had in India. Queen Victoria quite famously adopted or took on board some little princesses from India and converted them into Catholicism, like Dulip Site, when she borrowed or stole or got offered, it depends how you see things, the famous Kohinoor diamond. And the little Victoria, let me show you a photograph. So she was taken to the UK. She was given an apartment. They called them Grace of Favours, those apartments that belonged to the Queen, but they could live there for free. And they actually tried to match her with Dulip Site, but they didn't fancy one another. She ended up marrying, I think, a naval officer or some officer like 30 years her senior. She doesn't look very happy in the photograph. She probably wasn't, but bear in mind at the time we didn't used to smile because exposure was a bit long, you know, so you couldn't really hold a smile for that long. So that was quite normal not to smile. But we do know she was probably fairly unhappy because she did try to escape a few times. And you want a Grace of Favour? Well, yeah. I think there were a few Grace of Favours apartments in Hampton Court. I wouldn't mind one there. Sophia Dulip Site, she also had one Grace of Favour. She was a famous suffragette as well. Anyway, so yeah, poor little Victoria, she died and she's buried here. Her husband was completely neglecting her. She probably didn't have the best life. She probably would have been better at home. Anyway, that's gonna be the end of the tour. But let me show you the chapel, so you can have a view from here. And let me know in the chat if you happen to have any questions before we go about anything. It's quite beautiful. And another flight going down to Heathrow. I want to go somewhere. I was in Heathrow last night, but not to fly. I was just picking up a group from. Oh, that was the funniest tour ever. There was a group from Israel, and the tour leader. So the group didn't speak much English. So the tour leader would have me on the coach. I was talking, and she would translate. Obviously, I don't speak Hebrew, but I could tell that she was translating completely random stuff. Like I would say, oh, we are in the west side. Usually West London is a little bit more expensive than the east. That's it, one sentence. And then she'd translate, blah, 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 Tony Blair, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, I didn't say anything about Tony Blair. And I would say one sentence, and then she would translate it into 6 minutes. That was just so funny, like a comedy sketch. But yeah, that's busy time. So a lot of work these days. Anyway, let me show you the main avenue again, and do let me know if you have any questions. Thanks, Jenny. Thanks, Tish. Thanks everyone for coming again. It's always a pleasure to have you on board. Can I book you a place in the catacombs? I don't think they would accept you in the catacombs anymore. You could potentially get a burial here, but there are very, very few spots. But I'm afraid the catacombs are closed, as far as I know. Thanks, LS. Thanks everyone for joining. If you want to see a bit more of me, on the 24th, we're heading to Southend-on-Sea. So we've got quite a few crimes as well in Southend. So that's not next week. I'm not doing any next week because I'm just busy. I've been accepting a bit too much work. But yes, Southend, and then we're going to Regent Street the week after. So that's going to be a Monopoly tour as well, which is exciting because we've not actually been to Regent Street before. Well, we have on different tours, but not on Monopoly tours. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining today. Oh, thanks ever so much, Pauline. If any of you dropped a little tip on WhatsApp on PayPal or Buy Me a Coffee, it's very, very much appreciated. It is thanks to your generosity that I can keep creating new tours and do some new research and get to very exciting places like Southend. So thank you. And you've never been, Emma. I had never been myself until a couple of weeks ago. I went to take a look and check the signal. It's not too expensive to get to Southend from London. There are actually some cheap trains. Some people commute. It's a bit far, but some people do commute. Cool. Thanks, Jenny. Thanks, Kurt. Thanks, Emma. So hopefully I'll see some of you in Southend, and if not, I'll see you in Regent Street. Keep YouTubing, of course. And if any of you was completely new to me, I hope I got you hooked. So hopefully you'll subscribe to make sure you don't miss out on the fun next time. And bye-bye. Have a great weekend, and enjoy the match for those of you watching football in about half an hour or whatever time it is now. So see you soon. Bye-bye.